PC Gaming Weekspot, your recap of the last 7 days in PC video gaming. My name is Colin Mahern, and joining me this week, let the minutes of the meeting show that this man does not have the authority to kick anyone from this call. It is the one, the only, it is Mr. Matthew Castle.
Oh, I wish I had a quote from that thing memorized, because I would have yelled it. What else? What do they say? What does Aled say? He's my favourite one.
Aled, I believe, is the one who says he's going to subpoena.
He's the one who says, I'm in a Teams meeting, you fool! I'm in a Teams meeting, you fool!
I mean, I'm guessing everyone who's listening and watching this is aware of the Handforth Parish Council meeting, which obviously in this COVID era, they have to do on Zoom. And you have a lot of people who appear to have a base knowledge of how Zoom works. And thus, that's where the comedy lies. Like, it's about an hour and a half, and it went viral last week, but I watched about a half an hour.
I've only seen the cut down version
bits
with like the maniac shouting.
So like I think the meat of it is in the first 10, 15 minutes, and then it sort of calms down.
When she kicks the bloke out and then the other guy kicks off, and then there's this agent of chaos bellowing with laughter, which is like upsetting all the other old ladies. It's fantastic. What a thing. And
there's also Gollum, because I think that's, she does not have the authority to do that.
That guy must be so embarrassed. Will he ever be able to go out? Because everyone will be like, wait a second. You're that horrible bloke from that Zoom call. You shouted at the old ladies. What's wrong with you, man?
It's pure. I mean, it's like a sketch. It's written to perfection. It's absolutely marvelous and gives people a great depiction of those types of meetings. Thought it was absolutely.
That's basically every RPS team meeting ever.
There's somebody in the back. Oh, what? They do not have the authority to do that.
That's very much my role.
But Matthew, we are indeed here to talk about video games, and there has been a bit of moving and shaking over the last week. So, how's about you get your news crank and you open that information snack gob of yours for me, please?
Info snacks for his gob.
So, in smaller news, although I say smaller news, in very large news, starting off this week, Resident Evil Village's vampire lady is officially 9 foot 6 inches. And I won't lie to you, Matthew, I'm already bored.
The thing about that is, when that game comes out and it turns out that she's a baddie for like the second quarter of the game, and then you kill her in a boss fight, people are going to be very disappointed.
I did see somebody I think was on Twitter, said spare a thought for those at Capcom who are now frantically trying to rework the game so that you don't kill off the vampire lady within the first hour and a half. Because it could be the case.
That's always the way.
I mean, you look at spoilers for a game that came out 5 years ago, whatever. But like, I'd imagine Ubisoft are gutted that spoilers for Far Cry 3, gutted that they killed off Fass. And like within he's in the first half of the game, not in the second half of the game. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with the vampire woman. But yeah, she's tall. Cool. Sure. In less important news, Jeff Bezos has stepped down as CEO of Amazon. And the reason this is video games related is because one...
All right, please pray tell.
Is because one, Amazon Game Studios released and then unreleased Crucible on PC. And two, the new World MMO that I think was meant to be out last year and then still hasn't been out. And three, this is probably the most important bit, Amazon's new CEO, Andy Jassy, says that the company is committed to video games. There's been internal emails obtained by Bloomberg where Jassy talks about Amazon Game Studios. The quote is, being successful right away is obviously less stressful, but when it takes longer, it's often sweeter. I believe Amazon Game Studios will get there if we stay focused on what matters most. So, I suppose what this confirms is that Amazon, unlike, say, Stadia, and I haven't included the Stadia story in this because I felt like it's not really PC related. It is a little bit, but yeah, Amazon are gonna try and have a crack at it anyway, at least.
Well, that's good. Yeah, there was a good article on The Guardian last week by Keith Stewart about both Stadia and Amazon having internal studio woes and about the challenges of starting a studio, just trying to create a studio from scratch, and the dangers of that actually games are born from a studio culture, and a studio culture takes time to develop. I think that where you maybe have like an exception to that is where you have like a franchise or something in mind, and then you create a team. Because like Microsoft had some success basically building, they built 343 basically to make Halo after Bungie had left.
Yeah.
And whatever you think of their Halos, like they made perfectly good Halos. Some of them, they have elements of excellent stuff in them. So I think you can do it. I think you can kind of construct something, but maybe you have to have either, enough of a like defining vision to kind of like for everyone to kind of pull around, like just to get a load of strangers and then try and get them excited about like a whole new idea. It might be difficult.
Because even this, like when you look at Stadia, like they had some big names, like even, a Jade Raymond. So it's not like they were, I don't know, people who were totally new, they were involved in, say, software development and then they came into games. So
that's I still think it's, I mean, maybe some of this will kind of pierce the kind of bubble of the idea that a game comes from one person rather than a group. It's long been a problem that people attribute games to, the name at the top. They're like, oh, Warren Spector's Deus Ex. When
there are more. There are more
very complex things, and you can't just stick a load of good people together and get a good thing out the other end. There's a lot of dark magic involved.
Well, there is a studio that I know put out some things that you believe are good, and that studio is Me. The studio behind Desperados 3. They're working on a, quote, brand new original IP, they said last week. They also said that it does mean that on one hand, we are not working on Shadow Tactics 2, nor are we working on a Commandos or another Desperados game. On the other hand, it signifies that with the decision to create a new IP, we are able to create a new world with a new setting, story, and characters that will follow our own creative design choices. So, my question to you, Matthew, is what would you like it to be? Well, because we do. That's aside from that, we know nothing about this game.
Yeah, well, we know it'll be a real-time tactics game. Like that's what they're into. That's kind of what the studio, has now made 2 games in a row and has had big success in basically single-handedly reviving that genre, I'd say. I would love them to do something. I've said this on Twitter, so apologies to those that follow me there. At Mr. Basil _Pesto. Little side pitch there. I'd love them to make a spy game or a heist game, like their whole thing of a kind of tactics game where you have big personalities with very distinct skills. Like my dream IP is Mission Impossible. I think they could be a team that could make an amazing Mission Impossible game where you have this team with all the unique people and they're all working, sort of doing synchronous kind of actions, but they won't have the Mission Impossible IP. So something with spies or bank robbers or heists. What I think they're actually going to do is something fantasy and magic related.
Okay.
Because this has come up in interviews, and I know that
they're into that.
I don't know what his actual job title is. I think he's like their lead designer or creative director. I believe his name is Moritz Wagner. I've heard him talk about wanting to do a magic game, where the skills you have are fantastical and you can basically do whatever you want. So their Shadow Tactics Desperados 3 are both absolutely incredible. They can basically do what they like. as far as I'm concerned.
On
And
the
I'm sure it'll be good.
On the topic of spy games and, or heist games, because what you're describing, whilst not real-time strategy, have you ever played Monaco What's Yours Is Mine?
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's not... I suppose it's more of a strict back. Yeah. But you have, it is very much Ocean's 11 in that you have like this person is doing one thing and they have their own ability. This person is doing another thing, they have their own ability. And I think there's about 8 or 9 of them, different characters.
But that was like a co-op thing, right?
You could play solo.
Oh, you could play with a group of people. I couldn't really remember that. All I remember from that game is it had that really striking / slightly annoying art style where you could only see what you could see and the rest of the level was in darkness. And visually, I actually found it a little bit overwhelming to kind of like pass. But yeah, I think a single player tactics game where you can freeze time and set people up to do joint actions. I think a kind of spy thing. I really hope they don't make their own version of Commandos, because even though that's kind of the game, why this sort of genre exists in a way and why people are really into it. I just don't want another grim World War game. The Desperados and Shadow Tactics had too much character to go back to doing grim soldiers.
Yeah. Well, the fantasy magic thing is a decent theory. Yeah. But you mentioned freezing time there, Matthew. I do have one video game for you. The Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. However, you're not going to play it for a bit. We don't know when, basically. It's been delayed again. It was originally meant to be out in January, and then it was delayed till March, and Ubisoft have since delayed this remake once again. They said on Twitter, this extra development time will enable our teams to deliver a remake that feels fresh while remaining faithful to the original. The first delay was attributed to coronavirus. This one hasn't, it's just been delayed. So, I don't know.
I wonder here if people didn't react quite how they wanted them to react to the new art style, and they're tinkering with it a bit. I must admit, I was a little bit like, There were some elements of it. I really like the pitch because it's a Indian studio making this, I believe. And, a lot of their line was like, we're going to bring like a lot of our kind of like own cultural understanding and like art style to this. And that all sounded cool, but I wasn't like completely bowled over by what they showed of it. So maybe they're going to like tinker with it a bit. The faces looked a bit funky, I thought.
They did, yeah. It was
a bit hard-edged.
It was I suppose a sort of a similar reaction to Halo Infinite and that reveal, but on a much smaller scale, really. Like that.
Yeah.
People.
I don't know, I just lost a bit. It doesn't help that it's basically remaking a game which had such a distinctive art style, but it still holds up now. It's got this like dreamy softness to it. So it doesn't look massively old. It doesn't have a very timeless style, basically.
Well, speaking of old things, possibly timeless.
God, you're good with these segues.
I don't know. Thank you very much. Channel 4 is bringing back Games Master, except this time it's going to be a competition between 5 celebrities and over 3 episodes. Channel 4 has described it as a, quote, social first show, followed by an E4TX. Is that television speak for television series? And all 4 box set. Games Master, eh? Back once again.
I loved
like
Games
a renegade
Master
Games Master. As did I. I really liked it, yeah.
But a big part of the appeal was seeing like nerdy kids absolutely shitting it on TV.
Oh God, his name escapes me. Dave, what was his?
Perry.
Yes. Yeah.
The games animal.
Yeah.
With his infamous loss. If you ever want a really good laugh and you haven't seen it, look up on YouTube, Games Master Dave Perry Mario 64 challenge, where basically they have to race down the slippy side, and he just it looks like he's going. He looks like he's going for a bit of a shortcut because there's a famous shortcut in it, and then he absolutely messes it up, and then has a huge strop.
It's TV goals.
The host really, really ribs him about it. I know they used to get celebs on it to play them as well. I think, I don't know. do you really want to see like someone from, The Only Way is Essex getting their ass handed to them at Street Fighter? Not particularly.
I feel like wasn't part of the allure of Games Master because we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have Twitch, we didn't have all these this access to like seeing all these games.
Yeah. That was just a treat. What a treat! I mean, get to see them. The famous culture of asking Games Master for help at a game, which these days,
guides.
Games Master would just say, well, games are designed for you to finish them, so just do exactly what the game tells you. Why are you looking at walkthroughs? Or go to Google and type any game name and all you'll get is walkthroughs, because apparently that's what the fucking internet is now. So, no offense to our lovely guides writers who are incredibly talented. But it's not like we're very much beyond the age of, Games Master, do you have a level select for Sonic the Hedgehog 2? And then he goes, yes, press up, left, right, down, A, B, select. and that's my impression of Patrick Moore.
Extra spot on. I thought he was in the room,
but
Matthew.
Really, the best thing at Games Master is the kid would be there looking up at him, and they'd always start with, "Dear Games Master, I desperately need your help." She'd have to appeal to him. Then Patrick Moore, very famous astronomer, would then bark out some cheat, which he obviously had no idea what any of this was going on. But then he'd always say at the end, "Now get him out of my sight." He just didn't want to see the kid anymore. No, Games Master has spoken.
He was, I suppose, maybe he saw these kids as a sort of an enemy to himself, maybe even a nemesis, Matthew. And speaking of the nemesis system, which is the real selling point of both Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War, because in truth, those games they range from decent to good, but the nemesis system was something that was really heralded as this, I don't know, would I be wrong in saying groundbreaking thing in video games? Was really people raved about it. But if you want to play any games with the Nemesis system, they're going to have to be Warner Brothers games, because Warner Brothers have patented the Nemesis system. Apparently, they've been trying to do this since 2015, and they have been failing, I suppose, up until it was approved on the 3rd of February this year, and it will come into effect on the 23rd of February.
I thought they patented their very specific version of this. No, I'm not. I don't really understand kind of patents and whatnot. But I got the impression that it was their specific execution of this system. You could, in theory, still create a Nemesis type system, but you'd have to find your own way of doing it. Their way of doing it, you can't copy.
But is their way of doing it not the Nemesis system? Do you know what I mean? Because you've had a lot of developers come out and talk about how this is, restricting, and people say that game mechanics shouldn't be. You shouldn't be able to patent them.
That's true. That's the wider part. I saw some people, I saw some designers at the weekend saying, this feels to me like they've patented their solution rather than the concept. The execute, you are still free to try and execute this idea. You just can't use the technique. No, I'll put my hands up and say, I don't know that to be sure. But just to the general point, the idea of patenting mechanics, is kind of a grim business. And it's kind of hilarious as well, because outside of the Nemesis system, Shadow of Mordor, it could literally be a reskin of Assassin's Creed. Yeah. The way that character behaves, the specifically his assassination abilities are about as wholesale lifted from a game as I've ever seen.
Don't they? I'm sure they even. Do you know in Assassin's Creed when you assassinate a big person, a notable person, and it goes into the animus, and you have a conversation with this person. Doesn't Shadow of Mordor do something similar? I think I have that in my head.
Sort of similar. I mean, I just remember when the first one came out, there were videos putting their animations literally alongside Assassin's Creed, right? 2 animations, and saying that all the assassination types, alleged assassination, air assassination, from around a corner, they were literally like
just bang on
the same, like totally the same.
But as people have pointed out, some things have been patented in games and they haven't been acted upon. Like BioWare patented the dialogue wheel in Mass Effect, yet we have seen other dialogue wheels in games. What did Microsoft patent? They patented... Oh, that was... you getting points for doing... For basically getting style points in video games for doing, I don't know, whilst moving along, doing stylish stuff. So games that come to mind would be like Spider-Man. I know it's not a PC game, but Spider-Man comes to mind, where you're swinging through New York City and you can like flick around the analog stick and you'll get style points. So,
right.
So there's been a few. Like was it?
I also Nintendo have a patent for like insanity systems in games where
because
if you
of
have an Eternal Darkness,
yeah.
Yeah, if you lose your mind and then you start seeing kind of effects as a system, it's just quite funny that it's got like Miyamoto's name on it. And like when you think of the rest of his output, and it's all kind of like, you know, Mario jumping on mushrooms and stuff. And then, you know, he also owns the idea to a man loses his mind.
Yes, Headlines and Hot Takes is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where we take you through the bigger news stories of the past week. And this was, I suppose it's the biggest news story of the past week, but it's comprised of a number of small little stories, basically. Mass Effect Legendary Edition. There was loads of news in the past week about this because there was an early preview access to loads of press outlets. So let's kind of dive into this news dump, essentially. So we know that the release date for Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which is a compilation of the original trilogy, it's coming out on the 14th of May. And it includes, the 3 base games in one installer, a la Hitman, over 40 DLC packs, which includes all of the promo weapons promo weapons and armors. So I think if they did something with like a Mountain Dew or a whatever else, they would be included in the game. It's been remastered in 4K. There's enhanced visuals, models, lighting, special effects, etc. We'll get onto the lens flare maybe, because that did cause some issue with some fans, and gameplay and quality of life improvements. So they're your basic bits and bobs that they've included. Now, one thing they haven't included is the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer. BioWare told Game Informer that including it in the Legendary Edition would be, quote, too complicated. They said getting all the online systems working in functionality would have been a large chunk to do, but at the same time, there are a lot of other logistics involved. The economy is built completely differently. Then questions came up like, do we support it post-launch? And it was mentioned about cross-play between PS3 and PS4. So they decided, let's just scrap it. Another notable thing is that Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 are remasters, while the first Mass Effect is a partial remake, is what I've seen as the phrase being bandied around. What BioWare have done is made...
It's the old Mafia special.
Yes. BioWare have made changes to the combat and the UI of the original, trying to bring it up to speed with Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, really, the more action-centric sequels. Also, the handling of the Mako vehicle has been rejigged, which I know has been a point of issue for years and years and years. Also, on the topic of the original Mass Effect, BioWare haven't included one DLC from the first game called Pinnacle Station. This DLC was developed by Demiurge Studios, and BioWare, they found out that the source code was corrupted when they contacted Demiurge. It was like, I didn't realize we'd need that again. But then I'm wrong. The source code couldn't be found. It was the backup of the source code that was corrupted. And BioWare said, look, to do it from scratch would have taken ages. We would have had to delay the game. So we've just decided to leave it out. And another thing that was doing the rounds news-wise in the past week was that some cutscenes have been framed differently in Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, possibly Mass Effect as well, but they didn't really kind of mention that. But basically, the character of Miranda, who is the character voiced by Yvonne Strahovski, who was in, what was she in? Dexter, other things, the Australian actress. So in that game, the camera would often focus behind Miranda. And, you know, the dialogue would be saying something deep and meaningful and whatever else. But like, I don't know, a third of the screen would essentially be her behind. So, character environment director Kevin Meek told Metro that BioWare has, they've changed the camera and the framing on some of those shots, because when they were actually developing this game, they were like, why is the camera just on her arse there? What is that? What's that doing? It's doing nothing. Also, they've changed some of the occasions where the camera would be on the female shepherd, because Kevin Meek, he's talked to Metro. He's the character environment director. And he said, so a male shepherd animation would have him sitting with his legs wide open with a low camera, where if you were wearing a skirt, it would be quite unflattering. So we can't necessarily change that animation, but you can raise the camera up slightly to reduce the problem. A lot to unpack there. But first of all, Matthew Castle, what did you think of the trailer and the screenshots and everything we saw before we kind of dive into the nitty-gritty of some of the details?
I thought it looked good. How's that for a spicy take? I really like Mass Effect. I'm not obsessed with it. I've played through it once with my creepy ass shepherd. I didn't like it enough to do like DLCs and things. I've only played the base games of them, so that's kind of where I am as a fan of it. To me, I looked at all this and thought, oh yeah, that still looks pretty nice. And I don't really remember what the original looked like, so I'm assuming the upgrade, it all blended together quite nicely. It all looked quite natural. Looked like it was all of a piece. I then saw lots of people kind of joking about, the lens flare or how they've changed certain places, certain images, and they now lack subtlety. I mean, I sometimes struggle with these things because when you see them, you're like, oh yeah, of course. Like there's a shot that's been doing the rounds of the the big enemy ship, and it's all kind of, the sky's all dark. And in the shot they compare it to, the sky's all light and jolly, and it's much more like visually complex, but it completely changes the atmosphere of the thing. Unless I'd seen that side by side shot, I wouldn't have known that they changed it. Like, I don't know the games well enough, so I imagine I'll play this quite happily and go, oh yeah, this definitely looks like the original. A sort of shiny version. I've only got the very broad strokes, so this is probably aimed at someone like me. I think if you're maybe a real absolute diehard fan, who's really invested in it to that level where you can watch a trailer and go, wait a second, that text is less subtle. But you are really at the extreme end of fandom there, I would say.
And I think if they can produce a game that looks and feels the way we remember Mass Effect feeling, and even improves on the original Mass Effect.
That's, it's that the improvement, like the promise of like an action experience, which is like more in line with 2 and 3, is very appealing, because that was the huge jump. I think when I came to Mass Effect 2, there's loads of stuff about that game that's really strong, but you were like, oh, this is actually like nice to play. It was kind of a surprise. The first one, I felt like I endured a lot of crap because I really liked the world. I'm more excited about the short-lived journeys now in the Citadel. Because do you remember in the original, it was like if you wanted to change floor of the Citadel, and it could be like literally waiting a minute of just characters standing there doing nothing.
It was horrible.
I kind of hate I hate the Citadel in the first game. Like, it's such a mess of like individual hubs. There's so many different like transitions to get around it. I don't think what you gain from it, it's not enough of a benefit. Yeah, but then I know the funny thing about them announcing this is you suddenly get like all the Mass Effect discourse again, And, you get all the people who are like, well, actually, I love the Citadel. And you're like, all right, then. But that's mad. But
whenever you're starting a sentence with, well, actually, it's like, right, well, I don't need to listen to the rest of this. I didn't actually play Mass Effect. So I would classify myself as a Mass Effect fan, but I came in on 2 because the only way I had to play Mass Effect at the time was a PlayStation.
Right.
And so did
Mass Effect eventually come to PlayStation? Mass Effect 1.
The original game, I don't know. If it did, it was after 3. Because what they did was they released Mass Effect 2 and they released this comic book thing that you could play over, I don't know.
It did. 2012 it came to PlayStation 3.
Okay. But it must have, I don't know, over the course of about 5 minutes, you could play the main beats of Mass Effect by picking dialogue options. Just options on screen that would be like the Rachni Queen, does she live or does she die? And it's like, well, I don't have any attachment to the Rachni Queen because I didn't play the first Mass Effect, but so she can live, I suppose. I don't want to kill somebody I don't know. It seems a little bit unfair. But it was the best they could do, I suppose. They couldn't release the original on it. And like the fact that you have one DLC missing from this. I didn't play it, this Pinnacle Station DLC. Apparently it's one of the weaker ones. But like, so I don't think it's a massive loss because like Mass Effect's DLC offerings, like Lair of the Shadow Broker, Arrival, oh God, what was the one from the third one, the one that finished it off? That was like
Citadel.
Citadel. That was excellent. It really was excellent. It was very fan servicey, yes, but it was really well put together. So like, if you haven't played Mass Effect, like there's just so much here for you to latch onto and enjoy. But the Miranda story I found interesting because, right, I
loved looking at her ass. Is that what you're about to say?
That wasn't what I was about to say, Matthew Castle.
That's what I think you were about to say. And shame on you.
What I was about to say was like I suppose, because you forget, like in your own head, Mass Effect is celebrated, or you're like, well, in your own head, it's kind of built up, but from everyone else, it's celebrated as this like groundbreaking moment for storytelling in video games. And I don't know, you kind of forget about certain things that the games did that were very, early 2010s video gamey, where you would just have a giant ass on screen for however long, which is very teenage boy video gamey kind of stereotype. So like I don't know, and that's kind of got me thinking about, I wonder if the story will actually, like, will this game hold up? I do think it will, but
yeah, I think the characters are pretty strong in this. The world and the kind of lore of the place is really, really fun, really well thought out. Yeah, I think so. I think the fact that when you played Andromeda, which is a more recent one, there was such a clear drop in quality in the characters. I think that really reinforced how solid those original 3 were. And actually, I think, but obviously it's kind of hard to compare such different games, but like of a lot of game studios' work that you go back and replay, BioWare stuff tends to hold up, like even from way back. And I know it's different writers and whatnot, but like, the Baldur's Gate characters are really rock solid. Like they have such a kind of core to them of sort of like memorable quirks, personalities, stories you get attached to. They're so like well placed in that world, and also sort of the way they sort of weave into the main story is really well done. Like they're just, there may be a few bits and bobs where it seems, if you wrote them again, they might be softer in places, or you might tighten certain things up, or show less of their arse. But generally, they're pretty good.
I'm looking forward to it. To be honest, I'm looking forward to it. To revisiting that world, for playing Mass Effect.
I'm interested.
The original.
I thought in in my head, in the third one, some of the story outcome was tied to what you did in multiplayer.
It was.
Wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I thought the multiplayer sort of defined the kind of the state of the war, wasn't it?
The multiplayer was, yes. Yeah, as far as I can remember, it was still optional, but like you would have a better outcome at the end of the day if you played a bit of the multiplayer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but then at the same time, you know, Mass Effect is known for its story. Like, it's very much a single player game. They included the multiplayer in the third one, and by all accounts, like, some people really enjoyed it. It's not like it was completely tacked on. Another game that comes to mind from that era, say like BioShock Infinite's multiplayer, which did feel so separate from the original game. Mass Effect 3's didn't, not entirely, but at the same time, you know, you come to Mass Effect for, as well as the gameplay, you know, the story, the dialogue, the romance, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I personally don't think it's a massive loss. I don't know, are you going to pine for the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer while playing it?
No, I played a very little bit, like, back in the day, and it was good. I know some people are absolutely crazy for this game, and you know, it's one of their favorite multiplayer experiences, like a really classic horde mode. But yeah,
I'm similar. I'm just looking forward to diving back in and figuring out if Mass Effect still is excellent. Fingers crossed. It is. A video game that I don't think is excellent is Borderlands. But some people do, and some people love it so much they'll pay $1.3 billion for essentially just Borderlands. So, Embracer Group may be a name that you're not entirely familiar with, but if I said THQ Nordic, you'd go, yes, of course. Well, Embracer Group is the Swedish video game holding company, the parent company of THQ Nordic, the video game holding company that has, I don't know, upwards of like 50-ish on their books now, video game studios. In the past week, it was announced that they have acquired Gearbox Entertainment, which is the development and publishing side of Gearbox, in a deal worth $1.3 billion. So they haven't, signed a check for $1.3 billion, because essentially the sale is worth $363 million, and Gearbox's previous owners will get an extra $1 billion if Gearbox hits agreed upon performance targets over the course of 6 years.
Right.
Randy Pitchford, aspiring magician and co-founder of Gearbox 21 years ago, will remain on after the acquisition, and he has stated in interviews, this is going to allow Gearbox to do some mad things, and we're really looking forward to it, etc., etc. The voice that I was most interested to hear from was 2K, who is the publisher of Borderlands, and they did issue a statement shortly after the news broke saying, "The merger does not change 2K's relationship with Gearbox, nor our role as the publisher for the Borderlands IP or any other projects we are currently working on with the studio. We look forward to continuing our long-time partnership," and so on and so forth. But Matthew, $1.3 billion. Like, again, all right, fair enough. Yeah, if somebody could say, well, it's not exact, it is 363 million, and the extra $1 billion is if they, sales targets, etc., etc. But if you look at what Gearbox owns, okay, Battleborn, if they want to revive that at some stage, Duke Nukem, Brothers in Arms, Homeworld, and yes, Borderlands. Like, I don't know, is that something that you'd pay $1.3 billion for? Like, if you had $1.3 billion?
I mean, it depends, in terms of like studios and things that are, I guess it's maybe more a question of like what else is up for sale. If you're building this portfolio of studios and you want like a proper established AAA studio, the cost of setting it up, as we've seen with Amazon Stadia, this very problem of trying to make something from scratch versus something that works and has a, if not rock solid track record, has made a massive AAA fan. Whatever you think of it.
Yeah,
Borderlands is undeniably.
Don't get me wrong. Borderlands as a series is huge. It's not on the GTA level, but what is like it? I remember the series has sold millions and millions and millions of copies. Like it's huge. So like I get that. It's incredibly popular and whatever else, but like it's just. I think this deal is for Borderlands. In terms of the properties it owns. But that is a fair point about Stadia and Stadia and Amazon setting up studios and not being able to hit it out of the park. Whereas here you have an experienced studio who've done it all and had success. And this is very much under Embracer's umbrella. This is their, the cherry on the cake, whatever the phrase is. I get it. I don't know. But it's just, has Borderlands not had its day in the sun?
Yeah, but I thought this implied that Borderlands, I don't really know. I guess they're, probably not. Like Borderlands 3 was big, popular, quite good. I liked it.
A lot of people, yeah. Because I was going to say, it definitely felt like Borderlands 2 had massive staying power. That was in terms of critically and fan reaction, that seemed to be the height of the series. And since then, it's been on a sort of a gradual downturn with the pre-sequel and Borderlands 3. And I just wonder, have they missed out on the kind of the peak of Borderlands fandom? Maybe not.
I mean, maybe, but the studio that made it can make another thing. I think people, because of Battleborn, people maybe associate them with that now, and they're like, well, your last original idea was this, and it wasn't very successful, and da 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 da. And to me, I always thought Battleborn felt like a bit of a kind of desperate attempt to tap into a trend, which I think generally is where people come unstuck, is when people say, you're making a service game now. You're making a MOBA because we want to have an esports game. You're making this, even though, crowbar multiplayer, do stuff that isn't actually what you're good at. And when this studio returned to the thing it's good at, Borderlands 3, it was fine. It can absolutely do that. And it kind of, maybe knows its limitations or whatever. So having a studio that can make a game like this to this size and polish, this kind of budget, actually deliver it. I mean, not every studio can do that, And like I say, I think you probably struggle to find a studio of making games of this kind of size, complexity, polished AAA games that aren't so, they're just so massive and untouchable that they're part of something giant. Their success is so kind of proven that they just don't need to sell to a Embracer group. Here's a studio which is.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I feel I don't want to say it's the bottom of the AAA pile, but it's pretty close to the bottom. It's an understandable entry point into that particular realm of games, I'd say.
Yeah.
I couldn't name another studio. I couldn't, off the top of my head, I couldn't really name another studio like Gearbox.
Yeah, that's very fair. Somebody who has a really massively successful franchise, but to your point, would be maybe.
But isn't like a rock, isn't like a rock star,
Yeah. No, precisely. I just hope that if they do make a Borderlands 4 or whatever, that they make it less annoying. That would be terrific. If the dialogue wasn't quite as, whoa, memes. And it's all right, we get it. You're on the internet.
I think that is the problem. It's I think a big downfall of that game and game humor in general is that everyone's a little bit too internet savvy. and it just dates it horribly. And like in 5 years' time, everyone will be like, you know,
The jokes are
what
just
the fuck's
dead.
that? Like right now, there are all these RPG teams who are like, let's get the Hand Forth Council into our game. And by the time the game comes out, everyone will be like, who the fuck is Judith Walker? Oh, and I've already forgotten her name. What's her name?
Weaver.
Jackie Weaver.
Jackie Weaver.
Everyone will be like, what?
Judith Walker.
But you know, they'll be like that. I feel that way about like comedy films. Like the films, you know, there's that kind of group of comedians, you kind of Will Ferrell, Paul Rudd, and they have that kind of riffing humor, and they're literally joking about things that happened, you know, on TV that week. And then you watch those films 10 years later and you're like, this is really weird that they're making jokes about TV celebrities who are now completely irrelevant. You're like, this isn't really a film anymore. This is just like a sort of junk artifact from 10 years ago. Like just throw it into space.
It's like, that's an example of dating yourself, and like Borderlands does the same. But like, when it comes to, rather than television, focusing on this sort of like internet delivery of comedy, either in memes or just how it's like shouty and whatever else.
As part of this contract, I'd say like, we'll give you 363 million, and there'll be $1 billion extra attached to like goals over the next 6 years.
If you leave out Judith Walker in your game, don't include her.
And also, no more Claptrap.
Oh,
no
Jesus.
more Claptrap.
I'm dancing. Piss off, Claptrap, you bollocks. But
see, if the game let you say that, it would be
that would. If Borderlands 4 started with you killing Claptrap, that would be. Now there's a game. I'm in there.
Or it ends with a gun which only fires Claptrap. So there's one bullet in the universe which is Claptrap, and you just get to shoot it into the sun.
They should make him the villain, because he essentially is. So they should just really kind of hone in on that. But let's put Claptrap to one side, because there is a right angle coming up. It is time for Tech Corner, Matthew, and an exciting one this week, as NZXT, who we actually spoke about a couple of weeks ago when they did the PC shoes. They put the RTX 3080 in a pair of shoes. They've had to stop selling a PC case because they were a fire hazard. Basically, there was this tiny gap between a power connection and a screw. And I don't know, did some PC cases actually go up in flames? But they had to take them off the shelves, really, or the digital shelves as it were. So my question to you, Matthew, is, have you ever set anything on fire?
I have.
I love the way you'll almost always answer in the affirmative. It's terrific. Matthew, tell me, why and what have you set on fire?
I put in when I was a kid, we went on holiday to France and we stayed in like a caravan, and it had like a heater, like a little like electric heater, and for some reason I stuck like a paperclip in it and turned it on, and then it just set fire around the paperclip. So it was an accidental fire.
But did it spread? Did it do?
No, because it was a caravan, so it was quite hard to do anything without other people finding out. And I think I probably got a good wallop for that.
Show and tell, show and tell. We can't afford a proper jingle. It's meant to be jingle.
Yes, Show and Tell is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where we take you through the video games we've been playing over the past 7 days. Now, Matthew, I have been playing a video game that I know is going to split the crowd somewhat, right? Because I suppose essentially it is a crossover. So it's trying to take parts of one game and parts of another and smash them together. But the thing is, I have no attachment to either series. So I'm kind of coming in with fresh eyes and can judge it for what it is. And I can tell you, it's quite good. It is quite good. So that game is Persona 5 Strikers. So this is a sequel to the beloved turn-based combat PS4 exclusive Persona 5. Direct sequel, happens about 6 months after that story. But as I say, it is very different. It is a hack and slash RPG, and it's a crossover between Persona and Dynasty Warriors. But it's not wholly about hacking and slashing, right? And there are other differences I'll get onto, but what you're doing when facing off against baddies while dungeon crawling is the biggest change when it comes to Persona. So, and I'll try and be as succinct and explain as much as I can as possible, because again, I don't have a terrific knowledge of Persona 5. But what were known as palaces in Persona 5 are called jails in Strikers. There's a story reason for this, but it is a story-heavy game, so I won't get into why they're called jails. But these jails are your dungeons. Loads of different areas where you come up against loads of monsters. But whereas Persona 5, the combat was turn-based, here it's this hybrid. So while you're in battle, you play as 4 members of your party of 8 or 9. And you can switch control to any of these 4 whenever you like, usually depending on their strengths and the weaknesses of the baddies you're facing off against is probably, the best tactic to use. Each of them have their own melee weapons with elemental effects, their own guns, attacks specific to them, etc., etc. Like, this is only the second Persona game on PC, so I'd imagine there are probably a lot of people like me who are like, I don't fully what's going on in Persona, but that's your basic kind of understanding, right? But while you're wailing away on these monsters, you're just in real time hacking and slashing. You're also able to pause the action by calling on your persona. So personas are essentially the monsters that are attached to these characters, your party members. All of them have one, but Joker, who is the protagonist, he's able to wield loads. And you can switch them around, right? Now, these personas also have a whole load of different abilities that they can use, again, usually specializing in one area of attack. So like Ryuji's persona is electricity-based, Anne's is fire-based, Morgana's is wind-based, and so on. It's essentially Captain Planet. Think of it that way. Relevant reference for you.
1,000 Persona fans wail out in unison.
They're big. I believe Captain Planet is big in the Persona community. So when you pause the action, you open up your Persona menu, you can't be attacked. It completely pauses the action, a la, the turn-based Persona 5. So it allows you to survey what's happening around you, and it kind of gives you a chance to see the weaknesses of enemy personas, and it also allows you to sort of plot your next move as well. And I have to say, Matthew Castle, I love it. I really, really enjoyed it. Again, I have no history with Dynasty Warriors. I played about 10 or 12 hours of Persona 5. So I don't have skin in the game. Like, if you're a purist and you hate the idea of Yusuke leathering monsters in real time, then this isn't the game for you, if you're this turn-based purist. But the combination works like a dream in my eyes.
Do you know how many different personas you can take on as the main character?
I don't. Have on your person 10.
Yeah, well, no, but I assume like it's not like Persona 5 where like every enemy's up for grabs, is it?
I don't believe every enemy, but like loads of them, yes.
Okay.
I believe some of the enemies in like the last section of the game aren't up for grabs. I think, but I'm not 100% positive on that. But like loads of them are. Yeah, you can have loads of them.
Okay.
But like the action itself, it's responsive and fast paced when you're hacking and slashing, as you would expect, I suppose, from a Muso game. But you're also able to take a breather by pulling out your persona. And that's the other thing, right? I call it a Muso game because, I suppose that's what Dynasty Warriors is. But like, and the action is definitely chaotic at times here. Like you're sometimes facing off against a large group of baddies, but it never feels overwhelming because as well as being able to pause and use your personas, you also have plenty of opportunities to leap on enemies with this thing called all-out attack, which is basically where you press a button and the party just automatically laces a baddie, or you have your showtime attacks. So there's plenty of option to, if you are feeling a bit crowded, to just level the playing field a little bit. I suppose the thing is, right, Dynasty Warriors, a lot of people just turn off their brain when they play it. Like, I think there's depth to this because like as well as the personas and the abilities attached to each, like I said, you can control each member of your party as well. And they all have their own different, like their basic attacks, yeah, they're more or less the same. But each of them has their own distinct special abilities where like some characters will coat their weapon in whatever their elemental power is. And other ones like Morgana will transform into this cat car that you can essentially use to run over your enemies. So like at the beginning, yes, it is a bit button mashy. But like the button mashy won't get you too far. You do need to like be aware of what party members you're picking, what attacks you're using, making sure you're picking on the weaknesses of enemies, and just kind of watching what your enemies are doing around you in this 3D space.
Having played, some of the other spin-offs, like the Zelda ones that they did, I think they do quite a good job now of, increasingly of like marrying the kind of core of their kind of Dynasty Warriors action to like enough bespoke mechanics that it feels much closer.
Yeah.
To the game. Often, like, they're quite cleverly done because really they're just reskinning the same ideas, but they just dress it up in such a way. So, like in Zelda, they have in the recent one, which is based on Breath of the Wild, they have like the core spells that you have in that game, like the freeze, the bomb, the whatever. But actually, they're very similar. They look quite similar to like what you're probably doing with like fire, ice, wind in this game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it as a piece of fan service, it feels like it's it feels close enough to the thing it's sort of paying homage to that it kind of convinces.
Like, I mean, the UI, the even the attacks when you're like, you were saying yes to all those all-out attacks, showtime attacks, like all of that is in here. You have baton passes as well, where you change control from character to character.
Yeah.
And even during the real-time action, like if you're playing as Joker, for example, Makoto might pop up in the screen and say like, give me a go. I think I've got a good attack for this lad. And then you can like flip to her and she'll do it instantly. Where the mixtures of genres didn't really work for me was when I had to replenish my health or my SP. Now I know this is kind of a tough thing to get around, right? But like, because this isn't turn-based, this is like bang, 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 bang. This is really going, it is quite frantic, but in a good way, I want to say. Like when you want to replenish either your health or your SP, which is your persona skills, your mana, like it's just a bit of a pain pausing and going into the menus and looking for the item you want to use mid-battle, because there is no hotkey to attach these items to, because it sort of just kills the momentum of what is otherwise this like exhilarating battle where just so many things are happening on screen. And I get it, because like your party members are mapped to the D-pad. So like, where are you going to put these items, so on and so forth. But like, yeah, a small gripe, but a gripe nonetheless, I suppose.
What attacks will work on what enemies. Is it
so
all
on and so
hack and
forth.
slash, or does it have any of the social stuff between levels?
Well, there isn't an awful lot of it, really. So if you love the story of Persona, that is here for you. But like, you're not gonna be able to like go to school and meet up with so and so at this place and blah 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 blah. But like, all right, as somebody with basically zero history with the Phantom Thieves, who is the main group in this game, it acts as like a great intro to me and to anyone else. Now, if you do have history with these characters, I don't think you're going to get anything in the new when it comes to like character development. Right. But that's me saying that as somebody who was properly introduced to these characters by playing this game. Like there isn't much growth in most of them. And like, I understand it is a spin-off in the same way the Persona 5 Royal was. So like, maybe they don't want to establish too many new things here, as it were. I don't know. But like, all of these characters, they tick a box. Like Yusuke loves art. Futaba, immature nerd. Makoto, the responsible one. All of them just kind of tick a box in this group. But you will get character growth and progression when it comes to the new characters that they've added to the cast. And again, it is very story heavy, so I don't want to spoil things, but like Sophia and Zenkichi, or these new characters, they have very good arcs. And overall, I think it's a really enjoyable story. Like, sure, it can be wholesome, bordering on sickly sweet, I suppose. And each friend, as I said in The Phantom Thieves, is this kind of box ticker. But like, for hold on, I wrote it down because I wanted to make note of it. Yeah, I played this, right? My completion time was 38 hours and 37 minutes. And for that 38 hours and 37 minutes, I was hooked. I was in on this story, and how, you know, it handles some heavy stuff as well, and it handles it all quite well. But the reason I bring up my duration is because, like, yeah, this is a much, much shorter game than Persona 5. And this is where a lot of people are going to have an issue with it. Like, some will call it stripped back. Others might call it more focused. I don't know. But there is an in-game calendar in this. But the dates and times will only change when they need to change for the story. So I believe in Persona 5, you would know that, like, in a week and a half, you would have to do a certain thing. But like, you couldn't do that thing until you pass time in the game by doing other activities.
Right.
Like here, yeah, you're at the game's whim, I suppose. There isn't loads of stuff when it comes to like the social things in this game, but you do. It isn't all about the jails as well, and the metaverse, which is the weird world where you battle in Persona. Like, you can walk around these cities that you go to as well, because the Phantom Thieves, they're on this road trip and they're going around to all these different locations in Japan. And yeah, you can walk around these cities, but it's essentially just to stock up on supplies like HP or SP, you know? Like, and
I think it would be asking a bit too much of it to expect it to have like the full Persona, you know.
The full Persona experience, yeah. Like, you're able to access a shop from your base as well, so pottering around these towns becomes less important as the game progresses. But like, exploration is there, but it's minimal. It's minimal. Now, there is some longevity here for those that want it in these things called requests, which are these side quest type things. I don't want to call them full side quests because they're not really. But like, when you're walking around these areas, the cities, sometimes party members will like engage in a little side story with you to get certain items in a town. And it's not always signposted, so you sometimes have to figure it out for yourself. And that's quite nice, and character building and whatever else. But there are also requests to revisit jails. So like, I believe in Persona 5, once palaces were done with, they were done with. Here you can revisit jails after you've completed them. And these requests will be, you know, go back and kill 20 of this type of persona or whatever, right? And you get a little extra on top. I don't know, more XP or whatever it is, right? Or an XP boost. And what it does is it sort of makes it feel less grindy when you're essentially grinding to go back into these jails and make yourself more powerful for future bosses. But to be fair, like, I didn't have to do loads of grinding. Like, I did a decent number of requests, but it was nothing bordering on boring or annoying or anything like that. So, I mean, all in all, I think this was I think it's quite good.
Oh, like, I'm looking forward to giving it a go.
It reminds me somewhat of, well, what they've done reminds me, not the game itself, but it reminds me of what they've done with Yakuza, because they've essentially swapped here. Like, Yakuza has gone from a real-time battle system to turn-based. Persona here has gone from turn-based to a real-time. But obviously, this isn't a mainline entry. So, like, Persona 6, probably going to be turn-based again, and going to have all of your social, whatever you'd say, social systems and all that in the game. But here, it is more focused. And as an introduction for me to Persona properly, because as I say, I played like 10, 12 hours of Persona 5. Like, this is great. I really enjoyed it. I think it really works. And it's kind of, I will be listening the next time they announce a Persona game. Whereas previously, whatever, it's 100 plus hours. I don't have 100 plus hours to play a video game. Don't be silly. But I do have 38 hours and 57 minutes or whatever I said. So yeah, I enjoyed it. And that's out. It's not out for another 2 weeks, I believe.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What an early exclusive.
Well, not exclusive.
No, not exclusive.
But yeah, it's out on the 23rd of February. Matthew, you have been playing a different game to me. You have been, you've been out traveling during the night and making sure nobody sees you because you have a terrible ailment, don't you? You turn into a big scary...
I thought you were talking about me in real life. I do that in real life. I go for nocturnal walks.
You turn into a big scary werewolf man.
That's right.
Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, what a terrible name, first of all. Is the game bad? Is it better than the name?
Well, Werewolf the Apocalypse is like the franchise. It's the werewolf bit of the World of Darkness, which is Vampire the Masquerade as well.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So it's a sort of a role-playing universe, and this is the werewolf bit as opposed to the vampire bit.
Right.
I must admit, I don't really know the universe that well. This was a bit of an eye-opener. I don't know how indicative this is of the whole werewolf universe. It's quite weird. It's like werewolf as eco-warrior. So, werewolves in this fiction are like of the earth. They're basically like Mother Nature's like bodyguards. And that means their enemy are big oil companies. So what I have played of this game has basically every level is you infiltrating an oil refinery to deck everyone.
Okay, sure.
So it's kind of odd. And there's all these sort of burly dudes who then turn into wolves to fight, to smash up pipelines and things. I was saying to Catherine last night that all the people in this game look like they'd really smell.
Okay.
Like, they're very like, I don't know, they all like live in this weird sort of forest thing. I found the fiction quite hard to get into myself. It wasn't for me. Like they're all kind of gruff. Like, that kind of cliche of like what a wolf as a person would be like. Kind of sort of gruff and tough and a bit kind of edgy and it's very much that. It's very much what you'd expect. As an actual game, I think it's like it's sort of okay in a like 2005 action game kind of way. Like, very.
So
you know what I mean?
I do.
It's like. Not AAA, not indie, somewhere in between, like that tier of games that doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's got this weird split in that you can walk around as a person. There's like a sort of stealth phase to everything. So you can walk around a person or turn into a wolf who can move very fast and is obviously smaller, so can hide behind boxes. And you basically use that to kind of like infiltrate and sort of creep around, taking down guards. You can break into computer rooms and sort of hack cameras and doors and things, but not in a like Deus Ex-y way. Like it's very, very simplified. Like, you go into a room and it's like you can use the stealth to kind of take down these three people, but it feels like the game is designed that at a point it will become an action game. Like either enemies will just come into the room and you're forced to fight, or they're placed in such a way that it's almost impossible not for there to be action. So it's not like you can play the whole thing stealth, then the whole thing combat. And as a result of that, I felt like the best way or the quickest way of playing the game was just to transform into a wolf and just tear the shit out of everything.
Oh, so like completely disregard the stealth and just...
Yeah, like the stealth is just, all it does is slow you down, and it lets you pick off like half the enemies in the room. If you're going to end up in a fight anyway, like if the game wants you to fight, then you may as well just go through it, because once you're fighting, you can tear through everyone a lot faster. Like I felt like the stealth is a bit bogus in this game. Like it's just designed to like lengthen the game. So you take it kind of, the fiction's like sneak in and be quiet. But actually, like you go into a room, hit transform, just tear everyone up. You'll be done in that room in 20 seconds rather than 5 minutes. And it's easy enough that that's not a problem.
Is it fun though? Is it fun in a sort of like a prototype 2 or an Incredible Hulk?
No, you see that's exactly what I think it's probably trying to go for, is the prototype. Like, so this is me doing a bit of stealth by, this just to show the kind of pace of it. But like, this guy takes a single hit to kill anyway, so what's the point? Yeah, like if it had gone for the mega prototype that you have really fun powers, you can string together this kind of chaos, that would be great. This just feels quite vague. Like, you hit people and there's blood on the floor, maybe bits them go off, but it's not like, oh, cool, how gory, I'm like tearing people limb from limb. It feels very vague. When it does kick off, like there's lots of scenery in every room that you sort of smash through by dashing. That's moderately fun. So like, every fight starts with like 3 seconds of you just smashing up crates and things, which would have been like solid in 2005. It's very like GameCube, PlayStation 2 era. But now it just, I don't know, it just feels like such a relic. And, this idea of like there's stealth and there's combat to suggest that there's like a role-playing element to it, I don't think there is. Like, it's definitely not, the werewolf equivalent of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. There's a kind of hub area between levels where you go back to your wolf base and talk to your smelly wolf man friends. And that's like, it sort of furthers the plot, but it's about as bare bones sort of RPG elements as you can possibly get.
So this is it's an action game with RPG elements, not like an action RPG.
But like the RPG elements, it has a skill tree, and you can go in stealthily for a bit. Like the story suggests that there's going to be a tension between like, if you give in to your wolf form, if you give in to like your fury and become like the mega wolf, that's bad because you lose your humanity. But as far as I can tell from what I've played, and I've only played like 3 hours of it to be fair, which feels, I think the menu says that's about a third of the game. There's no like, every time you use your fury, you're losing humanity points. It doesn't seem to be tapping into any systems like that. Really the stealth is just to get the drop on enemies, like remove a few enemies from play. You can go to these doors where enemies spawn from, and you can like tamper with them so they get electrocuted when they enter the level. So you can kind of give yourself, stealth feels like you're giving yourself an advantage in the fight rather than avoiding fights wholesale. And once you see past that, you're just like, well, let's just tear everything up. Another really cheaty way is just to go up high and make everyone climb up and then kill them when they climb up. That seems to work a lot in this game.
Right. Yeah, I like you saying it's a 2005 action game. I mean, looking at it here and from what you've described, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, I do wish that there were more, for lack of a better term, AA video games rather than like, big budget, money dripping off screen AAA and like, small indie. Like there is a place, like, you look at something like a Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. Like that's would come under your sort of AA. It looks prettier than this, but like
this just doesn't have the ideas. Like I'd love to know kind of what they were thinking with this one in terms of like, as a license, I don't think the Werewolf role-playing game is like substantial enough to like draw in the punters, and it has it has so little in common with a role-playing game that I don't think it would satisfy them even if they did come. I feel like the Vampire the Masquerade license is big mainly because of the games. Rather, I think if there are lots of people who wouldn't necessarily know it is a tabletop game. So I just don't really know what the appeal of this one is. There is a great werewolf game to be made, I think. The tension of man and wolf and your two different forms, that's kind of interesting. A bit like a werewolf version of Vampire, for example.
Right, yeah.
But this is just like button mashing, like not very interesting action game. Doesn't have like interesting like parries or blocks or anything like that. There's no like mechanical grace to it. I don't think. It's just sort of smashing through it, and it's very, very average.
Okay. Well,
I think it's an Epic exclusive as well. Maybe
I believe it is. Yeah, I believe
so
it is.
Really, that's the icing on the cake.
Now you have played another game over the past week, so I hope you had a better time with this one. Tohu, Matthew. The only thing I know about this is that we played it on a stream whenever that was. But like, yeah, very little else. Adventure game, is it? What's Tohu?
Yeah, it's I guess kind of you could call it a point and click game. I mean, very minimal interface, doesn't have like a big kind of verb wheel or anything like that. We played this as part of the Death of the RPS video team stream. I think was it that?
Yep, yeah, it was that.
All right, here my going away party, let's call it. I was really struck with it back then just because it's gorgeous. I love the animated parts. It all feels very hand drawn. There's lots of details. Like it's almost like an interactive picture book. It's about like spotting all the little details. You can really drink it in. And at the core of it is sort of, I guess what I think the best thing to liken it to is it's like, I guess there's like a hint of like your old school like Myst and things like that. Like it's like a dialogue free, like interpreting kind of weird puzzles. Some of it's simple item combination puzzles, but there's also lots of like switch puzzles and sort of pattern recognition, things like that. I guess some of it's about like there's almost like a Where's Wally or I Spy element sometimes to like looking at images and clicking on things and seeing things how things move and interact. It's obviously very sort of detailed and sort of sumptuously drawn. But that is also part of it. It's like finding out what bits are interactive. And in the past, that's been something that kind of bugs me. Like I don't like it when I don't know like what's in play and you're just clicking on every pixel. Pixel hunting is the infamous cliche. But here, it's also sort of alive and the endearing character designs that it doesn't really feel. I didn't get massively stuck. I haven't finished it by any means. I don't really know how long it is. Steam reviews seem to put it in at about 4 hours, I think.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, just I don't know, just a really beautifully made thing. I remembered it from when we did that stream, so I thought I'd give it a little mention. Feels like, tone-wise, because there isn't any dialogue, it's very animated, animation driven. I think kind of, it's quite kid-friendly. I think the puzzle's actually probably a little too hard for like very young kids. Like I did get pretty stuck at times.
Right.
Of what I've played, but like as something that people could play together, quite fun, clicking, interacting on everything. I thought this was pretty sweet, actually.
No, it looks very nice. And that's out, isn't it? I think that's out.
That is out now. Yeah, that's been. I think that came out last week or a couple of weeks ago. But Tohu
looks good. Looks good.
It's time for Mystery Steam Reviews. Yeah.
Yes, Mystery Steam Reviews is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where we test the knowledge of one another via Steam reviews that are a mystery. The rules are as follows. Both I and Matthew bring 3 Steam reviews to the MSR arena, but we omit the name of the game associated with each review. Our opponent must correctly guess the game attached to each review. 1 correct answer equals 1 point. While both of us have 90 seconds on each MSR, we both also have help in the form of 3 lifelines. These lifelines can be used at any stage during battle and also pause the 90-second timer. Each lifeline can only be used once, and they are as follows. Question, where the hot seat haver gets to ask a yes or no question. Second opinion, where a second review is given to the warm chair sitter. And genre, where the genre of the game is revealed to the one with the warm arse. Now, we did something a little bit different for this week's Mystery Steam reviews. Rather than try and tailor us towards something happening in the real world or something happening in games or whatever else, what we've done is allow you to decide what we should be testing each other on today. So we ran a poll on youtube.com/rockpapershot on last Thursday, I believe it was. And I need to figure out how to stop polls on YouTube because it's still going. But And we needed to make a call basically at one point. So the one that we're going to do today actually is now second by a handful of votes. But, you know, what are you going to do? We had to prepare for this. So the games that we're looking at today are video games featuring animal protagonists, or fish, or basically non-human, but they can't be aliens, or they can't be like created people in Skyrim, a cat person, whatever else. So yeah, playable animal characters. I think it's pretty straightforward. So look, Matthew, let's get into it. Here is your very first Mystery Steam review. Find stick, scratch butthole, get smart. Ape life is good. And that's from Shag. Shag recommends it. 0.9 hours on record, 0.6 hours at review time. Matthew, your time starts now.
Oh, Jesus. Oh my God. Find, stick, scratch, get smart, ape life. I mean, that brings to mind... Oh, what was that stupid evolution game we played as monkeys? Oh, I say stupid, I didn't really like it. It's like Ancestors. There's something odd, like Ancestors, like a human odyssey. Ancestors. I thought that was an Epic exclusive. I didn't think it was on Steam. Well, maybe it came out long ago that it is on Steam. Finally, that window of exclusivity is up on Ancestors. I can't think of any other games you play as a monkey. I mean, Ape Out, but you don't scratch your butthole in that game. You just smash skulls against the wall. I don't think that would be my read. Other games you play as monkeys. I'm going to go with Ancestors.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah, that's my final answer.
Pretty much straight away. You know, this review brought to mind Ancestors, which was the game from Michel Ancel, hyped up massive. Oh no, sorry, that's Wild.
Patrice
Désilets. Yes, yeah. Which was hyped up quite a lot when it came out. Kind of failed to inspire many. But has it inspired you to your first point in today's Mystery Steam reviews? Matthew Castle, I can tell you that the correct answer is Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey. Congratulations. Your initial thought was indeed correct. So Matthew Castle, 1-0 up. I have a feeling I will be lucky to get one, but let's see. I'm going to answer Sonic the Hedgehog to all of them. Matthew, could I have my first Mystery Steam review, please?
Humorous lore, sweet synth music, soundtrack, and decent voice acting go a long way. Some animals are more equal than others. Foxes beat ducks, says Knocker. Recommended at 18.8 hours on record.
Time starts now. So, ducks bring to mind oh god, what's the name of it? Mutant Year Zero. Road to Eden, I think was the subtitle. Sweet synth soundtrack. I doubt that had a synth soundtrack though. I didn't play it. I'm pretty sure it had voice acting. Foxes beat ducks. Oh, do you know? So yeah, in Mutant Year Zero, there was like, I don't know if you could get different characters, but I know like the marketing around, because I didn't play it, but like I know there was a duck. There was a fox in that, was there? I feel like what would help me would be maybe my genre. Yeah, I'm going to pause the timer, 38 seconds. Could I have my genre lifeline, Matthew, please? Because yeah, this will either confirm my suspicion or throw me off track, I have a feeling.
This game is described as a turn-based tactical role-playing video game.
Mutant Year Zero, Chris.
Is that your final answer?
That is indeed my final answer.
So, you thought this was Mutant Year Zero based largely on there being a duck in it? You didn't know if there was a fox in it. Is there a fox in Mutant Year Zero? It is a turn-based tactical roleplay video game. But is there another turn-based tactical video game with animals? The correct answer is Mutant Year Zero.
Yes. Get in, my
Off to
son.
a good start.
Good.
Off to a good start. And no bullshit so far.
No, all animals that you can play as.
They are animals. There is no debating that.
Nope, it's all above board. Let's see if we can continue this streak.
hang on. Is a duck an animal? Let me look it up.
Come on. All right, here's your second Mystery Steam review. This game is basically just 1, walk to a thing. 2, say ha ha, that is a funny thing. 3, walk away. And that's from Jocosity. It is recommended 5.1 hours on record. 4.4 hours at time of review, and it's meant to say.
Is it recommended?
No, it's not. It's not. It's meant to be not recommended.
Oh right.
Your time starts now.
Walk to a thing, save, and then you walk away. I really need to get closer on the animals for this. Give me the second opinion.
Okay, we're gonna pause the timer there at 1:16. As Matthew uses his second opinion. So the second opinion of this review is as follows. Apparently, this animal can make a truck explode 11 out of 10. Apparently, this animal can make a truck explode 11 out of 10. And your timer restarts now.
Ooh. God damn, that's difficult. I thought it might be like Sam and Max, because they're a rabbit and a dog, and you just walk up to things and they tell jokes, so you're like, ha ha, that's a funny thing. But that's where my thinking was going, and that clue has not helped me at all. This animal can make a truck explode. I don't think you do that in Goose Game. I don't think a truck explodes in Untitled Goose Game. Listen. Can I get the genre?
You can, of course. I'm going to pause the timer there. I like this aggressive use of lifelines. The genre of this video game is a third-person perspective action video game. According to wikipedia.org, a third-person perspective action video game. Your timer, 42 seconds, restarts now.
Oh my word. I really shouldn't have used those clues. They've not helped me. Third person animal game. You're running around. You're an animal. You blow up a truck. It's not Werewolf. What animals can smash things up? Like a gorilla, like a dinosaur. Oh fuck!
5 seconds.
Keep it up. Shark? Oh, like man-eater. I don't know. There are trucks in the water. It makes no fucking sense. What am I doing? I was just trying to think of destructive animal games. Piss.
So this one stumped you a little bit. When you saw that there was some kind of humor involved, you were thinking Sam and Max. But the second opinion and trucks exploding, and then the genre of a third-person perspective action video game has led you to Man-Eater, which indeed is where you play a shark, and a destructive shark at that. But is it the right answer?
A truck? You wouldn't reach for truck, would you? A man-eater.
You can jump on ground. You can actually go on land as in Man-Eater. You can. Matthew, the correct answer is Goat Simulator.
Oh, fucking Goat Simulator. I pushed that game out of my head because I fucking hate Goat Simulator. That is like meme the game.
It is very much meme. Very much meme.
Oh, fuck Goat Simulator, man. Why is it not a simulator on Wikipedia? It's got it in the name. It's a third-person action game. If you said simulator, it would have been like Goat Simulator. Like, that's Wikipedia bullshit. Who wrote that page? Does Wikipedia have a... Right, hang on, 1 second.
What are you going to change it? Edit the Wikipedia page live on air?
Who wrote this page? Does it tell you?
I doubt you can see that, can you? Does Wikipedia reveal
it does. I want the oldest version of this page.
What, to see if it's
someone called March. The oldest thing was by someone called Jade Phoenix Pence on Wikipedia. If you were the person who listed this game as a fucking third-person action game when it's got simulator in the title, I'm changing it. After this stream's finished, I'm changing it because that is bullshit.
Matthew, could I have my second Mystery Steam review, please?
Brings me back to the days when we had to blow on games to make them work. 10 out of 10, says AJ Natrix. They recommend this game at 9.5 hours on record and 6.2 at the time of review.
Time starts now. Brings me back to the days when we had to blow on games to make them work. So, this is obviously... It's not like a Mega Drive re-release or whatever. This isn't Echo the Dolphin. It's something that makes people reminds people of old games. But what old game? Yeah, I'm going to pause the timer at 53 seconds and I'm going to use my second opinion, Matthew, please. So I think that may help somewhat.
Your second opinion is clunky controls, annoying dialogue noises, but charming humor and lovable characters.
Okay, 53 seconds, time starts now. Clunky controls. You can edit the Wikipedia page after Mystery Steam reviews. Clunky controls, annoying dialogue sounds, was it?
Yeah, clunky controls, annoying dialogue noises, but charming humor and lovable characters.
So annoying dialogue sounds. That only makes me think of Yooka-Laylee. And I mean, yeah, maybe I was going back too far with Mega Drive. I'm going to say Yooka-Laylee, I think. Yeah, let's say Yooka-Laylee, Chris.
Interesting. Is that your final answer?
That is indeed my final answer.
So you seem slightly stumped by the original clue. Then you asked for a second opinion. You seem to latch on to annoying dialogue noises as a key defining factor of Yooka-Laylee, which is indeed a tribute act to the N64 games of Rare, which would have had cartridges you blow on. But is it the right cartridge that you blow on that is being referenced in this game? It's the most confusing sentence. The correct answer is Yooka-Laylee.
Yes. Yes.
It would be 2-2 if not for Wikipedia bullshit.
Happy with that. Yes. Because do you know what initially came into my head? Do you remember that game Tanglewood, which was somebody actually made a Mega Drive game. They released it on PC as well, and I was like, it's hardly that. Matthew, would you like your third and final Mystery Steam review?
Yeah, go on then.
Don't bother wasting your time with this one. The levels are too big, mechanics are clunky, and it feels soulless compared to its spiritual predecessor. I regret kickstarting this game. And that's from Ray the Gamer. It's not recommended, 4.7 hours on record. Matthew, your time starts now.
This is Yooka-Laylee. This is definitely going to be Yooka-Laylee. Because its spiritual predecessor is Banjo-Kazooie. Its levels are too big, this review is correct. And it was kickstarted. This is definitely Yooka-Laylee. And I also congratulate you on the whole, I don't know, like, not having Yooka-Laylee pop into your head for the last question. Good play acting, you disguised it well. This is Yooka-Laylee. I don't even need that last clue.
Is that your final answer?
If you've not used a clue, you should be able to turn that into a point at the end.
Give over. Matthew, almost instantly, you looked at this. This is actually a rare instance of a Mystery Steam review you agree with. You're like, yeah, this person is correct. These are my feelings towards ukulele. But was this review attributed to ukulele? Matthew, I can tell you that the correct answer is ukulele.
3 for 3.
Well done. Well done. Matthew, could I have my third and final Mystery Steam review, please? I wasn't expecting to get any points this week. I'm quite happy.
I have seen lots of comparisons to Sonic and Metal Slug, but to me it feels more like the Donkey Kong Country series. You collect peanuts instead of bananas, and humans instead of coins, says Bottled Water. They recommend it. 5.7 hours on record, 5.3 at the time of review.
Time starts now. What? Comparisons to Sonic and Metal Slug, so it's 2D. But it feels like Donkey Kong, you collect peanuts instead of bananas and humans instead of coins. So who eats peanuts? Elephants?
Me?
Elephants? I don't, as we learned a number of months back here in the Weekspot.
I mean, man is an animal.
Oh, come on. Elephants? Monkeys? I mean, this would be so out of left field. You would never pick. So it was a 2D platformer. I don't think I ever played it. So I don't know how much of a Metal Slugginess there was to it. But like Tembo the Badass Elephant, which was made by Game Freak, the Pokemon people. This is hardly Tembo. Because who remembers? I don't know why I remember Tembo the Badass Elephant. I mean, I have a question, but I don't know what I'd ask. Tembo the Badass Elephant, Matthew. Why not?
Is that your final answer?
Yeah, it's my final answer.
The correct answer is Tembo the Badass Elephant. Bravo, sir. 3 for 3.
Oh my god, this is the proudest moment of my life, I think. I cannot believe. Why did you pick Tembo the Badass Elephant?
This is an elephant. It's an animal.
But who remembers Tembo the Badass Elephant?
You. It's a Sega game.
I mean, that's probably why, yeah. And I do remember the Pokemon Game Freak involvement as well.
Yeah, you remember more about this game than I do. I knew that was. I thought. I was looking at that one, thinking, "Shall I do this?" I thought, you know what? I think he's actually got a chance of getting that.
I'm overjoyed with that. Marvelous. Happy.
It would have been. It would have been a complete 3-3 for both of us, if not for Wikipedia.
Dude, that's the first thing you need to do after we finish the show is edit that Wikipedia page. So yeah, those are your Mystery Steam reviews for this week. And we probably will do the same as last week. So, come Thursday or whatever, put up a little poll on youtube.com/rockpapershot and give you a few options as to what you'd like us to do for next week's Mystery Steam reviews. Yes, thank you very much, Screaming Man on Fire. Burning Questions is the part of the PC Gaming Weekspot where we indeed take your correspondence, your feedback, your burning questions. You can email us at any stage throughout the week, weekspot@rockpapershotgun.com. Just like, as I pull these up, getting over my joy of Tembo the Badass Elephant, Mog got in touch. And Mog, as always, gave us a tenner on youtube.com/rockpapershot during the premiere of this, the video version of this. Thank you very much, Mog. You're just an absolute star. Mog asks, how do you generally avoid being completely off the mark with reviews? Do you check your own thoughts against those of your colleagues before submission? As always, fantastic work, chaps. Matthew, because I would say 9 out of 10 people, like, you know, you don't concern yourself with the opinion of others. Like, if you do, then you're on a fucking slippery slope. Like,
no, I mean,
like I worked in an office before where there was another publication, right? And I would sometimes be reviewing or covering a game that this person was as well, or another person would be. And like, yeah, like, cause you know, he still is. He's a nice fella. If you're watching, Rich, I love you. But like you know, we would just chat. We just have a chat. So like, you know, these things are going to come up. So like, if something was, or sometimes we'd share the same opinion. Sometimes we'd have differing opinions. But like, I'd never go, oh, I need to change my opinion now. Like, yeah, I don't.
I mean, like, I always review in a vacuum. I don't listen to anyone else because mine is the only opinion that matters. I mean, literally in my review, that is the case. But also more widely, that is the case. I simply do not care. People are entitled to read my review and agree with it and copy it, because of course it is the correct opinion. But no, I never check my thoughts. Like, I am interested to hear my like colleagues' thoughts after the fact.
Yeah,
but I like, my nightmare is when I'm reviewing something and someone sends me like a Twitter DM and they say, "Oh, I'm reviewing, you know, hey, are you reviewing this? I've da 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 da. This is what I think. I don't want to hear it." Like, that's kind of death to me. It's like, I have to have it completely in my own head.
As you say, in a bubble.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be slightly different working back when I was working on magazines, because we had like a room where 3 magazines had their review station set up. So I'd be reviewing my Nintendo games, and like Andy Kelly from PSM3 would be reviewing PlayStation, and then there'd be the Games Master boys on the end reviewing their thing. We'd all be on different games, and there'd be like banter and chat or whatever, but I always make it always very careful not to like colour anyone else's experience of it either. Like, it's just not helpful to be like, "Oh, that looks shit." That's the worst thing, is when you're reviewing something you love and someone looks over your shoulder and they're like, "That looks shit," and you're like, "Oh, just shut the fuck up," you know? It's been quite beneficial on RPS, actually. It's just like, because we work from home, work from home, or because we were largely a remote team, we could do all that without, you know, everything could be done alone. It's quite fun when everyone does chip in, like when the embargo breaks and you click through everyone else's reviews just to see what everyone else made of it. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I think it's a bit of a myth that people, because a lot of scores tend to be grouped together, I think people assume there's like lots of people, you know, like, it's not like there's a secret community of games journalists who get together and decide to give something a 9. It just doesn't really happen. It's more interesting when there is a spread, but it
is. And which kind of brings me nicely onto our next question, because that's why I wanted, if you remember, that's why I wanted to play the medium, because I was so interested by all the varying reviews. So Jordan got in touch. Jordan said, since the talk of the medium on Game Pass, I wanted to chip in. Whilst I love Game Pass and it is genuinely the best deal, I do find that it makes me much more prone to drop games. I usually will sit and finish a game unless I find it truly awful. But with Game Pass meaning I don't really pay for the games, I find it much easier to play for half an hour and drop it, which is exactly what I did with the medium. Do you guys find you are less invested in games when you haven't made the literal investment? Cheers, Jordan. I think that's a hard one to answer, because a lot of the time we won't have made the investment because we'll be given code to cover a game. Now, if it's a game for fun, so we'll kind of disregard getting code and whatever else for coverage purposes. But like, if it's just for fun, then yeah, I think I'm probably guilty of that at times. Like, you know, playing a game for a little bit and kind of deciding like, nah, that's fine. I'll move on to the next Game Pass game.
Yeah,
It depends.
yeah, maybe with Game Pass, and I honestly, it's easy for me to say it, you know, when like 95% of the games I've played in the last 13 years I haven't bought, you know, but I still do buy games. You know, I've bought everything I play on PlayStation and now Nintendo, for example. Like, I don't know. It's just tricky. I don't know. I feel like you still. This isn't the question. I misread this question as does the money still factor into it? Like when I'm reviewing something, I do think of the money. Like that is like a mental check in my head at the end of every review. Is like, you know, does this still hold up if I paid 50 quid for it? You know. I think buying something, you're naturally more invested in it. I think people actually have a better time with things once they've bought them, weirdly.
Do you think that's because they at times have to try and convince themselves as well?
Well, yeah, it's a complete, but we all do it, you know, all the time, you know. So, like, I think it takes something pretty powerfully bad for you to buy and be like, I really hate, you know, like, for me personally, I will fight through a lot of shit to try and get to the good and find the thing, you know, that the games, like I had it last year with Ghost of Tsushima, which I thought was very, very boring, very, very boring indeed, and I resented having paid 50 quid for it. And you know, that was one where you were wondering where, like, if I had to play this and was forced to play this and hadn't paid money for it, would I naturally think that? But that was one where, you know, I'm really convinced that's a boring game because even having paid money for it, I struggled with it. Yeah. It's tricky. I'd say the relationship with games you have paid money for is probably more interesting than ones you haven't paid money for. I mean, I see that as an added bonus. If there's something great on Game Pass, I'm just like, woohoo.
Well, I mean that too, yeah. Like it's a different thing if a game that you are planning on buying turns up on Game Pass, as opposed to something where you're like, I don't know what this game is, or you know.
It does raise quite interesting questions though about like subscription services and what counts for quality on them and whether it is traditional quality. Like, you know, on Game Pass, particularly Microsoft's first party games, you know, if they're making certain games to fit that, you know, if actually people like will enjoy a 7 out of 10 enough that you can kind of make a 7 out of 10. Like, does every game, you know, are you aiming for knock it out of the park, 10 out of 10? Because if it's absolutely the most essential game you've ever made, surely you want to sell it and get people to buy it. You know, it becomes a huge added benefit. You obviously want all the games to be good, but you know, I feel like on Netflix, there is a bagginess to like all of their original programming, both film and TV. I think there's a bagginess that wouldn't be acceptable on TV, for example, or wouldn't be acceptable in the cinema. But I think they get away with stuff because it is free. I feel like there is a whatever their process is, there's a, like, I don't know, a lack of tightening.
Okay. I think at first that bagginess wasn't there though, and that's where Netflix sort of got its good name from. When you
because then it was, but that's
because it was like, this is prestige telly, like this is on the level of HBO. And it was competing
with the things you pay money for.
Yeah.
And now it's won everyone over. It's like, it's a load of old shit. And you're like, great.
Well, that's kind of what, like Netflix, not to the same, like I don't think Disney Plus is in that space yet, or even Amazon Prime to an extent. Like, whereas Netflix feels like something that if you're chatting to somebody, you just expect them to have, you know, because it's entered that phase, and like, I don't, you know, Xbox cannot afford to be complacent like that. I'm not suggesting it, but you know, like they need that service to have prestige games on it. But like, I definitely wouldn't have played the medium if I had to buy it. Yeah. But that's why I said, like, I when I was on about it last week, like that I think that's a good Game Pass game, like something, because and we're talking about value and stuff like that. Like, I think that is a bit pricey, to be honest. So, yeah, I don't know what we've cured there. Maybe streaming television. I'm not sure. Maybe we have. But yeah, we're going to call it there because we have ran a bit long. But if you want to get your burning questions into the PC Gaming Weekspot, email us, weekspot@rockpapershotgun.com, and then we may read them out on next week's show.
Or just send us nice things.
Or just send us
nice messages so we feel good about ourselves.
That would be nice. But that just about does it for this edition of the PC Gaming Weekspot. Thank you very much, wonderful viewer, listener, consumer, for consuming. Of course, if you want more of us, more Weekspottiness, there are a number of things you can do and subscribe to and all of that. So, as Matthew wonderfully pointed out earlier, you can follow him on social media at Mr. Basil_Pesto if you want. You can follow me at column_Ahern. Also, if you want to talk to some like-minded people, head over to Discord, discord.gg/rockpapershotgun. Also, if you want the video version of the PC Gaming Weekspot, youtube.com/rockpapershot. And also, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, all those things that those famous YouTubers say. If you want the audio version, subscribe to the PC Gaming Weekspot podcast via all your podcatching apps. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, etc., etc., etc. But for all of your PC gaming needs, head to rockpapershotgun.com. Another episode in the bag, Matthew Castle.
I seem to have shrunk through this episode.
You have a little bit indeed, yes. But I can say that the two of us have the authority to kick ourselves and you off the call now. So now it is time for my least favourite part of the show. This is the part of the show must bid the listener, the viewer, the consumer adieu. So say goodbye.
You fool!
Say goodbye, Matthew Castle.
We're on a Teams meeting, you fool!
And say goodbye, Colin Ahern Sloan. Guffaw.